Okay, today we're going to talk about repairing models in Maya. So if you go under Demo Resources on the D2L, you should see something called Model Repair V2 or Model Repair, and it's a Maya file that I made and uploaded here. So if you just download that and then open up whichever Maya project that you're working in and just load it into your scenes folder. And I'll find it under my downloads. And I'll just take the file and I'm just gonna drag it into my scenes folder here. So again, this is my scenes folder right there, and I just drag that file into there. And then I'll open up Maya and open scene, file open scene, find Model Repair V2 and open it up. And here we go. So make sure that you have your modeling toolkit over here to the right, and then to the left you have the outliner open. So to open the outliner, you go up to Windows and Outliner right there. And you'll see here that these are named, if you look at the end of the names, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, up to 10 here. And so there's 10 models in here, a little obstacle course we made here of model repairs. And each of these models has an issue with it, or a repair that's needed, that are all very common issues that need to be repaired. And I believe that each of these models is relatively simple in its own right. It's just a matter of learning them all and just knowing how to put it all together when working on your scenes here. So let's start at the top. So this will be model 1. So you just select it in the outliner and press F to frame it up on your keyboard. And you see here we have a shape here with some gray faces and some black faces here. And so whenever you see black faces in your model, that means that the face is inside out. And so the way to fix this is to right click and go to face mode and select, oops, it helps, oh gosh, it helps to frame the object. So make sure that it's framed, and if you look at the object here, it looks like, just for instance, this face right here where my cursor is looks like it's black, but until you rotate it to the front, you can't really tell. Sometimes the viewer will kind of play tricks on you. So make sure that you press F with the object selected, and that'll make it so that you can toggle around the object really easily and face the faces right towards you. So just hold down Shift and find the faces that appear black here. And again, you can't really tell until you get the face facing right towards the camera here. So I'll just keep toggling around so that all looks good. And so the way to fix this is you have to reverse the faces. And so that's under Mesh Display right here. So it's Mesh Display and Reverse. So if you ever need to fix faces that kind of look like that, just go to Mesh Display and Reverse and click that with the faces selected, and it'll fix it. If your whole model is coming out looking black here, you can also flip it that way, Mesh Display Reverse. So that's an object mode right there. But if you only have some faces that are black and some that are gray, you'll need to select the faces that are black and then do the reverse faces from there. So that's how you fix model 1. So moving on to model 2. So if you look in the outliner, you can just select model 2 here and then press F and it'll frame it up. So the idea with this model is we want to center the anchor point, because if I press W or press the move tool, you can see the anchor point's in the wrong spot here. So I want to center the anchor point and then center the object along the grid here, so that if I wanted to, I could mirror it, for example. So here, I'll just press W to kind of see where the anchor point is. And so something that you can do is you can press D as in dog And you can see here, you can manually move the anchor point around, and you can try to position it into place. And press D when you're done to get it there. But you can see it won't, you'll never kind of get it totally exact there using that technique. And so I'll just edit undo. But that can be, the D shortcut is super useful for a lot of different circumstances. So just definitely have that in your pocket here. If your anchor point's out here and you want to center it, just center it right into the middle of your object. You can go to modify, and then we're looking for a center pivot. So here it is, modify and center pivot right there. And so what that'll do is it'll move the anchor point into what Maya computes as the center of the object here. So just toggling that around, that looks right. And so from here, if I want to center the object onto the grid here, I can just hold down X as in Xerox and then just grab the right arrow. And you see here it snaps to each point of this grid here. So I can snap it so that it goes right to the center. When I'm done, I just let go. And we've got a centered object right there. And so now if we wanted to mirror it or do any techniques like that, that is available for that model now. So it's a pretty quick fix right there. Next model. So we have repair holes 3 right here. And so this is the third model. You can see here, looking at this model, that there's some holes in it that need to be bridged or fixed. And so there's kind of 2 ways that I'm going to show to kind of bridge holes here. And this is the simplest of the 2. So if it's available for you to fix a model this way, I would suggest doing it this way. And so the way to fix this is you right click and go to edge mode. And you can just select one edge and then hold shift and select whichever edge is opposite of it. And then you just go to the modeling toolkit, and underneath extrude, you press bridge. And it didn't do it the first time, but I clicked it again and it worked the second time. You can see there it worked. You can also, in edge mode, select the whole edge loop. And that can be helpful if you have a bunch of faces here that you want to bridge. And press bridge, and it'll also work that way. What won't work is if you select 2 edges like that, I bet. Yeah, you see if you do it where they're 45 or 90 degrees like that, the bridge won't work. So just make sure to select 2 edges that are across from each other and then bridge them, and it'll work. And if Maya creates the bridge for you, it's pretty much a guarantee that it works. It should be all sewn together and everything should be good. If the bridge doesn't happen, that's Maya's way of saying it didn't work. So it's not going to make the repair most likely unless it totally works. The bridge gets gapped and everything's welded together and it's good to go. So one thing you can do too is, let's say we have a larger hole like that. You could probably just make a bridge just by selecting those 2 and those 2 right there. Press bridge, and you see it almost worked. But in this instance, now that we have more faces here, we might want to just select all the edges on the edge loop, because you see here, if I edit undo, whoops. If I just select those 2 edges and those 2 edges, and then I press bridge, it worked, but it didn't give me a bridge between these horizontal faces. So if I just hold down shift and get the whole edge loop here and then press bridge, oh, surprising. Okay, that normally works. Let's see here. So if that didn't work, I'm going to just go through some problem solving, because this is a problem solving tutorial here. So I'll try edit delete by type history with the model selected, just to see if there's something in the modeling history that is causing the fault to occur here. So I'll try this again. Okay, so if it comes in like this, the way you want to repair this is to use the multi-cut tool. So I'll just use the multi-cut tool in the modeling toolkit, because I want these to be quads here. So I'll just start with this vertice, make sure it glows up red, go right across from it, make sure that vertice glows up red, press return, and same thing here, make sure the vertice glows up red, there. Make sure that one's red, press return. And now that should work. Yeah, sometimes with the bridge tool, when you're starting to bridge more complicated faces, you might need to use the multi-cut tool. And so here, last one, we have this empty face right here. And so I'll just, for this one, I think I can do 2 edges like that, 1, 2. Sometimes it's helpful to press 4 to preview the wireframe to make sure I didn't select any edges by mistake here. That looks good. And I'll press bridge, and model 3 is fixed. So moving on to model 4. So model 4 is a tricky one. So this is where in this model, it looks fine, but secretly I have double extruded a couple of faces and edges here, and it's pretty hard to see. So let me take this model here and just shape it so that it looks, you know, this is a correct model in the foreground here. Oops. And so they look the same, these two models, right? But when I smooth this one, or preview smoothing it, by right now it's in 1 mode, I'm going to press 3 to preview what a smooth will look like. It should look like that. But this one that has a bunch of double faces and double edges extruded, when I press 3, you can see it. It should look the same, but it looks different here. And so to fix this problem is pretty tricky. You might first discover that you've double extruded an edge or a face when you go to move a vertice, for example, and you drag it and you see it looks like it extruded or something like that. Or you drag it this way and you see the reverse faces show up. So the way I problem solve this is I make sure I'm in vertex mode, so right click and go to vertex. And then with the model, I'll tap 3. And you can see here, it looks like this point should be 1 point, but then when I tap 3, you see it goes out to 2. And so what I'll do is I'll find the inner edge loop right here and select those edges and then delete them. And that's the fix right there. That's the main fix to kind of get rid of the double extrudes here. Make sure just to check vertex after you delete edges. A lot of the time when you delete edges in Maya, it'll leave the vertices behind, which will leave 5-sided faces and cause all kinds of headaches for you. Since that was a connected loop, that edge, and we got another one here, since these edges make a loop right here, and it has to be like specifically this kind of loop. If the loop went all the way around the model, the vertices would remain. It's pretty dumb with Maya the way it works, but hey, it is what it is. Deleting these edges will also delete the vertices in this case, but we'll see in a later example here that most of the time when you delete an edge, it'll leave vertices behind for you to have to clean up. So I've got one more here. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Delete the edges. And so now we're close, but if you see here, this model up right here that's correct, up top it's rounded, and then this model up here, up top it's sharp. And you'll notice that sharp edges can happen when it's smooth, but you usually need more geometry around it. And you can see that's just razor sharp there, but there's not any geometry around it. So that's usually a good telltale sign that an edge got double extruded here. And so a good way to test that is just find a vertice that's connected to the edge, press the move tool, and see if I drag it, you can see a reverse face shows up, or it looks like an extrusion happened when all I was doing was moving it here. So a way to fix this is I'll just right click and select edge, and I'll just move, in this case I'll move the edge inward just a touch, just to expose that double extruded edge here. So this is that edge right there, if I press F, that got extruded. So the way to get rid of that is if I try to delete the edge, you see it didn't do anything. And if I try to delete vertices, it's not going to do anything here. Oh, I spoke too soon. It did work that time. Most of the time, I don't know. A lot of times it doesn't work. But anyway, the safest way to delete that, I think, is to right click and go to face and select the face so that the face you want to delete glows up red or orange, and then press delete, and we should have a clean model at this point. And so if If I right click and go to object mode, tap 3 to preview what a smooth looks like, you can see now these two objects are identical and that object is fixed. Those double extruded faces and edges happen. The way that that typically happens is if you right click and go to face and you press extrude, and let's say you try something and then you press edit undo and move on, but I didn't press edit undo twice. So I just pressed edit undo once here and see the model looks fine. Looks like I can just go about my life here. But when I type 3, I've got a double extruded face right there. So that's kind of the most common way I think that happens. And the same thing goes for edges as well. So if you can get in the habit of when you extrude and you decide to edit undo it, just edit undo and then edit undo again to make sure that those move controls go away. And now when I press 3, it looks normal. Okay, so moving on to object 5. So after this one, we'll be halfway through. So this is a model where we have a quarter of a cylinder here. And let's just say we want to mirror this across here. So this is just kind of a recap of mirroring objects, which I feel like is a big part of repairing things. So a lot of times when you're repairing things, you might break it down into the smallest component you can to fix, especially when you're dealing with complicated models, and then you can mirror it back to fix it here. So looking at this model, it is along the Z line here. So if I mirror it across X, you see right here where my cursor is, if I mirror it across X, that'll work. But if you see here, it's not center pivoted in the center of the scene. So just kind of keep that in mind here. So to mirror this, normally you can just press this button right here to mirror it, but sometimes you might need to set your options for mirroring. Let me just try something. Yeah, that didn't work. Let's see here. So if you go to mesh, and then what I was testing there is I wanted to see if I held shift in the mirror, if the options box would come up, but that didn't work. So to get the options box for a mirror, I'll go to mesh, mirror, and options box. And you'll get the menu here. And the mirror tool is, there's a few things that can go wrong with it when you're working, and if you know the things, it's pretty simple. So looking at this, X in the negative direction and in custom mode here will probably work for this. So let's just go from the top to the bottom on the mirror options here. I never really mess with this. The mirror axis position, you can set it to world or object here. And so since this object is centered in the world view right here, world is the safest option here to mirror it correctly, I think, for this case. We're mirroring this in the X direction so that you can mirror from the X, Y, and Z axis here. So if we wanted to mirror it this way, we would do the Z direction right there. But now we're going to do the X direction to bring it from right to left. We're going to bring it in the negative direction, so you can choose either negative or positive. So negative should bring it this way to the left, and then positive in this instance would mirror it to the right side. I always combine it with the original and merge border vertices. That's really important to keep those selected. So don't mess with those. Automatic most of the time works, but I just know that in this case, having just done this demo, that custom's what we're going to want here to get this correct here. So you might need to toggle back and forth between those two. So that's kind of all the controls there. Since we're going to mirror this across the world axis, I know that this should probably work since this object is right in the middle of the world axis here. So if I press apply, you can see it mirrored in that direction. But now you can see the world axis runs right there. So if we try world axis again in the Z direction, it's probably not going to work. So I tried Z in the positive direction, and the model disappeared. So whenever that happens, just kind of keep messing with things. Try Z in the negative direction. I'll press apply, and you can see that it at least kind of almost got the idea, but it mirrored it across the world axis. You see, so the world axis is running there, so it mirrored it across the world axis. So in order to fix that, I would have two options here. I could just this time mirror it, instead of across the world axis, do it against the object and press apply, and you see that fixed it. So that's one way. Or I could hold down X on my keyboard and snap the object to the center of the world, so using the X shortcut, X as in Xerox, and you remember that snaps it to along the grid here. As I hold X and I move it, it snaps it from one grid point to the next until you hit the center there. And so now if I do world, it should work. And there you go. So that's mirroring an object. Moving on, we're on to object 6 here. So object 6 here, we have an object that we want to make into quads, but has a lot of what's called n-gons, which is faces with more than 4 sides. And the way I usually check for n-gons is I go to vertex mode, and then I can see here that, like, for instance, this face right here has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 vertices, so that means it's got 5 faces on it. And when you have 5 faces on your objects, it makes it, you'll find sometimes you can kind of live with it, especially when you're dealing with booleans and stuff like that, but it kind of means your mesh got pretty messy. It's not going to be riggable anymore. It's going to be hard to bring it into other 3D software. And when you try to use the multi-cut tool to create edge loops, you see how it's not letting me create a full edge loop? That's because the edge loop keeps running into 5-sided faces and tries. So the edge loops only really work when they're running through quads. So that's another reason to kind of fix this. So in order to fix this, I'll right click and go to edge mode. And let's just say for this instance that I want to just turn this into a normal plane with, you know, a checkerboard kind of grid. So the first thing I'll do is I'll just hold down shift and delete these edges. And keep your eye right here in this area after I delete these edges. And so I'm going to delete those edges. Looks fine. But then when I right click and go to vertex mode, you can see here that the edge left its vertices behind. And so that's what's going to happen almost all the time when you delete an edge, other than that first example I showed today. So just kind of go through and find these vertices and delete them. But before I do that, I want to show you an important tool here in terms of finding n-gons, because you can see here I have all these stray vertices around and I have a lot of 5-sided faces here. And so let's just say you're working on a model and you want Maya to help you find the 5-sided faces. You can go up to select the object, go up to mesh, cleanup, and then the options box. So mesh, cleanup in the options box. And you'll get this options box right here. And it's really important that you set this up correctly, and it's only one thing you need to change. So I'm going to reset my settings just so that if you've never opened the cleanup options box, it should probably look like this. And it's really important that you don't select this one. So do not select 4-sided faces. Fixed by 4-sided faces, what that does, it's a little tricky in its wording, is it's gonna, if I press apply, it changes things into tries, which we don't want. We do not want tries right now. But what we do want, and a lot of times that'll just screw up the whole model. In this case, that actually wasn't that bad, but most of the time it'll just screw up your model. So for this, what we want to do is faces with more than 4 sides. And what this is going to do is Maya is going to do a bad job at trying to fix your model for you. And so it'll make an attempt at fixing it. And it's a pretty ugly, sloppy thing that it did there to try to fix the problem. But the way I like to use this tool, and the way most people like to use this tool, is you see how it highlighted orange these areas that it tried to fix? What Maya does is it's showing you the problem areas. So if you have like a complicated model, character, or vehicle or something, you know, just something complicated that you're trying to find the 5-sided faces with, this will help you. It'll highlight in orange the areas that you need to fix. So I'll just press apply and I'll take a look at the model, you know, and kind of mentally take note of where the problems are. And then I'll press edit undo and start working, you know, from there. Just kind of do it manually myself. So to fix these 5-sided faces, I'll go to vertex mode, and all I need to do is just find all the the stray vertices, the vertices that aren't really connected to anything important. Like so in this instance it's those. I'll press delete. And then once you've done it, you can check your work by going to mesh cleanup options. And then trying again with faces with more than 4 sides. I'll press apply. And you see here the model didn't change, so that means that it's fixed. Okay, so moving to object 6, which is called make a cube. This is, let's just say that this is an object that I wanted to be a cube, but maybe I was just kind of like working on some vertices on this side over here, like getting into the details, and then by mistake, you know, some vertices up here got pulled, you know, in the way that I didn't want. So the instinct here might be to take that vertice and just bring it down and try to like fix it by eye to bring it to the same height as all the other ones. But you're never going to get it exactly right doing it this way. You might get it close, but when it comes time to, for instance, smooth the model or something like that, that's actually not too bad, but you'll kind of start to see that it's not perfect. And it also will take more time than the thing I'm about to show here. So if you want to flatten this object out, you could. I think it helps to go to the orthographic view, so I'll press over the perspective button, perspective view. I'll just tap spacebar, just a quick tap. And then I'm going to use the side view here. And I'll press spacebar again to zoom in on it. And so what I want to do is I want to take this vertice and I want to flatten it out with those vertices right there. So the trick that I do is I'll drag and select like this to get all those vertices that I want to flatten together. And again, the orthographic view is definitely the best view to do this in, because if you try to make the selection in the perspective view, you might, let's just say I'm trying to make that selection, go to the other side, you see I selected all those vertices by mistake. So almost always it's just quicker to go to the orthographic view and make the selection here, because it's going to go a lot better. So I just want to select these vertices and only those vertices. And I'll press R or press the scale button right here. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to take that green slider and I'm going to drag my cursor all the way down to here. And you see that? It flattens out the whole object. So you're just dragging and it brings them to a point where they're flattened here. And then I'll just press W, move them back into the position that I want them. So let's do it again on the side view right here. So if I want to flatten all these vertices over here on this side, these are the vertices I want to kind of bring it to. These are the vertices that are a little out of control there. And so I'll just drag and make sure all of them are selected there. And then press R. In this case, it'll be the blue square, and I'm going to drag it from left to right and flatten it out that way. If you're doing this, this works 99% of the time, but if something's kind of going wrong here, when you do that, try double clicking the scale tool right here. Just make sure that under axis orientation, so again, I found the scale tool over to the left and I double clicked it to bring up this menu. And just make sure that axis orientation is either under object or world, and it's not under one of these other options. Object is probably the best one here. So just make sure that says object. Sometimes if it's one of these other ones here, the axis will be kind of wrong, and it'll kind of, you'll do this and it'll kind of do it like that. If the wrong one of those modes is selected there. So yeah, just make sure that you press the scale tool, just go like that, and it should fix if it looks wrong. Just double click here and make sure this is object right there. And then once I have it, I'll press W and move in. I can see that there's some other vertices that must be wrong. Here we go. So I'll find them in the perspective view. I might take this object and just move it so that these other objects won't be in the way when I try to see it in the orthographic view. And I see this front view down here, it looks good. So I tap spacebar to get out of perspective, and then I'm going to tap spacebar here to go into the front view. Same thing, right click vertex, select those vertices right there, so make a selection box like that, again like that. Press R. In this case, I'm going to drag the red box from right to left and drag it all the way in so it flattens out. And now we kind of turn that crazy object into a cube. Okay, so in this next one, if you recall, with this object right here, we used the bridge tool right here to bridge holes. And so this is kind of the other way to bridge holes. I'm going to combine, this is like a few different techniques in one here. So this is snapping vertices and then merging them. And so it's another way to bridge holes, and it's also a good way to combine two objects into one. Okay, so it's this in the outliner. It's this one right here, combine two objects, and then it's number 8, so we're on the 8th one. And so we have cube 1 right here into the group. And so you can tell it's a group because it has this plus button to the left, and then it's got this red arrow right here, which is the outliner's indicator that we have a group here. So if I select the whole group right here, it'll select both objects. And so the groups can be a really good organizational tool when you're modeling complex objects. Like, let's just say that you have a motorcycle with a bunch of parts in it. You can group them together and just have it so that you can have the vehicle consisting of multiple parts, but you can still drag it as one thing to reposition it. Same thing goes if you just had like books in a bookshelf, you know, anything like that, where you have multiple objects that you want to have work as, you know, a basic unit. But let's just say that we want to combine the two objects. So in an instance where you'd want to combine two objects is if perhaps it was two objects that were actually welded together in the model, or if you modeled a head, you know, a character head, and then you modeled an ear and you want to combine them together, that would be another example. There's a lot of times where you'll want to do this. And so let me just first move this smaller square into a position where we approximately want it to go. All right. And notice here, I'm going to undo that. Notice here that the object here is hollow on that side, and then there's a hole or it's hollow there on that side. This works best when that's the case. So make sure that both objects you're combining, you've deleted the faces to in the center. So does that make sense? Because it's like, if this cube was all watertight and then this was watertight and we combined them, it would create some weird faces inside of there. And so if you have a hole punched in both of them there, it'll make it so it turns out to be a clean mesh, and there's not any, it's kind of, it would, if there were faces in there, it'd be the equivalent if we kind of double extruded a face or an edge or something like that. So I'll just move that into position. So this is a 3-step process. So the first thing we want to do is we want to combine these two objects. And so I'll just hold down Shift and select both of those objects right there. And then under the modeling toolkit in the top left above smooth, I'll press combine. So I'll press combine here, and it makes Maya recognize them as one object here. If you look in the outliner here, so I'm going to edit and undo that. This is the group right here. And just keep your eye on this area when I press combine. So I press combine. You see the history of the group remain there, but that's mainly just the history that got saved. And then it made this object right here. So Maya now recognizes these two things as one object, and so they kind of communicate together. But you see Maya didn't do anything to actually merge the vertices or do any merging or welding here. So all the combine tool does is it just tells Maya, hey, think of these as one object, and that's it. You know, it doesn't do anything else. So that's step 1. Step 2 is we're going to snap vertices. So right click and go to vertex. And in this case, I'm going to want to snap the vertices of the small square onto the vertices of the big square. So the vertices of the big square are not going to move. They're going to stay static. But these vertices right here are going to move into their into position here. So I'll select this vertex right here, I'll start with this and I'll work clockwise. I'll make sure the move tool is enabled. This won't work unless you see these arrows here to move the vertices. So I'll hold down V as in vampire, and you'll see right here that this little circle comes around where that square is right there in the center of the vertex, and you'll also see that it's this snap tool right here that we're using. So I'll hold down V, and I'm just going to drag my cursor on top of the vertex where I want it to go. So I'm holding down V, I'm clicking in the center of this move tool where that dot is, and then I'm just going to drag it, and it'll snap to the vertex that I want to move it to. And so now it's almost done. That's step 2. But you can see here that there's still, the two vertices are snapped into the same position, but they're not welded or merged together yet. So the next thing you want to do is you want to make sure not to do a click like this, but to do a drag and select like that to make sure that both of those vertices are selected. And then you'll go up to the top and press this button right here, which is the merge button right there, and it'll merge the two vertices together. So just click that button, and then the distance threshold will show up. And again, merge is right here. It's this button right there. You can also find merge vertices under Edit Mesh and Merge. So if you prefer menus rather than icons, Edit Mesh and Merge. So that's step 3. And so we don't need to redo step 1, but we do need to redo step 2 and 3 over and over again for this. So I'll just go work clockwise, and F is your friend here because it'll frame up the object nicely for you each time you move from one vertex to the next. So just select this vertex, V, snap it, drag and select, and the merge button right here. And this goes pretty quick when you get used to it. So again, this vertex right here, make sure it's in move mode, hold down V, snap it, drag and select, and then merge. I'm just continuing to work clockwise, and I'll press F so that it'll frame up and you see my camera just stays focused on it when I toggle around. So make sure you're in move mode, hold down V, snap it, drag and select, and then press the merge button up here. Sometimes it's good to press 4 so you can see it in wireframe, just to make sure I'm not selecting a bunch of vertices in the back of the model there. So you can kind of see that you're making the right selection, and then I'll press 5 to go back to shaded mode. And then I just merge vertices, F to frame it, W to move it, V to snap it. And I pressed Q just to get the move tool out of my way right there. So when you ever see the move tool disappear like that, that's because I pressed Q to just get rid of it. Drag and select, and then merge. I think we have 2 more. F, W, V, drag and select, merge. I'm just kind of announcing the buttons that I'm pressing here. So W to get the move tool, V to snap it, Q to get rid of the move tool, drag and select, and then merge. And that's the process for welding together or combining 2 objects into one mesh here. And when you're done, something that can be a good habit is just right click and go to vertex mode, and then just select a vertex kind of at random where the scene was happening, and then just drag it, and if the edges go with it, that means that you welded it together. And I just press edit undo to bring it back to its original position here. So we're almost done. We're on object 9 now. So press F to focus in on object 9. Fix smooth faceting 9 is the name of this one. And so you can see here, this is an object where I had pressed 3 to preview a smooth, and you can see this crazy weird faceting that's happening on it. Right now, the reason you can see the wireframe on these shaded models right now is because I have this button right here selected, so that's called wireframe unshaded. So if I press that button, it'll deselect it. So you can see this looks like a weird polygonal pumpkin thing here. So if I press 1, that's kind of the actual object there, and I had 3 so that we could see what it would look like when it was smoothed. And so What this is less of a repair and more of to show you how to just avoid needing to do a complicated repair, because this is an instance where it's much easier just to avoid the problem in the first place. And so a lot of the times when you're working with cylinders, even if, let's just say, even if I thought to do a bevel here on this edge, when it comes time to smooth it, I might eat my words here. Let's see here. That's actually not too bad. So the bevel is one way to get around that, but you can still see this ring right here is jagged. And it can be pretty difficult to work in there if that's the case. And additionally, if you don't create that bevel, when I smooth it, it looks like that, which is awful. So the main way to avoid this is just when you create a cylinder, go to Attribute Editor, and this should be the very first step you do when doing a cylinder. This does not work if you make any extrusions at all to the model. So this has to be the absolute first thing that you do. You can, most of the time, get away with scaling the model before doing this step, and it'll still work. But if you do even one extrusion here, and you try this, it's that your model will malfunction. And so as the first step, when you have and this is cylindrical objects we're talking about, where it's got the pie pieces right there, make sure that under the attribute, so you have the object selected, under the attribute editor is the third tab that says polycylinder 1, so 1, 2, 3. And again, it's the attribute editor right here. I have the subdivision axis set at 60, so that's when I change that. That's what that means right there. So 60 is a good number most of the time for doing this. It's like a nice number that gives it a good amount of geometry. It kind of minimizes faceting, and it's divisible in a nice way that when you use the mirror tool, it divides up in a nice way, because if we divide it up along the half, sorry, I'm thinking the wrong way. If I divide it up along the half, we'll be able to use the mirror tool there. So anyway, I digress here. So under the third tab of the attribute editor, right here, you just want to make sure to give it subdivision caps. So now when I preview it, it looks crazy like that. If I add some subdivision caps to it, right there, I just added 5, nothing too crazy. When I press 3, you see it looks good. So it's tricky, because if you're working on a model and you've been working on it a while, and then you smooth it and then you realize it looks like that, adding these edge loops in here can be a little tough, because just for instance, if I was going to try to use the multi-cut tool, so normally if I hold down Control using the multi-cut tool, which is this option right here, just gives me a nice edge loop, nice and easy. I'm just doing normal clicks there, holding Control. But then in here, it doesn't, I'm clicking, it's not letting me do anything in there. And so it's pretty tough to add these edge loops in after the fact. It's not an easy or clean thing to do. If I was in a bind, honestly, and I'd been working on a model for a while and I had forgotten to add those subdivision caps, most of the time I would probably just like delete that out, make sure I had made the right selection, make a new whatchamacallit, polygonal disk in there, or make a new cylinder where I did create the subdivision heights, caps, sorry, and I would weld it on. That would probably be my fix there. So it's just, you know, it can get a little hairy there unless you just set it up correctly from the beginning. So yeah, just make sure to set that one up correctly from the beginning there. And then we're moving on to the last one. So this is Sew Edges Together Tim. Last object, I'll press F to frame it up. And this is going to be the same technique shown as this one, which is snapping vertices and merging them together. And what I just wanted to show here was that since this is one object instead of two, right? So this was originally 1, 2 objects right there in a group. This is one object right here. And so it was a 3-step process to combine them here, but in this instance, it's only going to be a 2-step process because it's just one thing that we're sewing together. And so this is the technique that'll be used a lot with the car modeling. If you look back at the Lamborghini tutorial that I have, I'm using this technique all over the place here. So if I just want to sew these 2 vertices over to these ones over here, I'll right click, go to vertex, I'll select that vertex, and let's just say I wanted to move it to that way. I'll hold down V, or I'll press W, then I'll hold V, and just drag it into the position. Q, drag and select, and then press the merge button right here. Same thing here. W to get the move tool, V to snap, Q to get rid of it, drag and select, and then merge. And that's all there is to it. Let's just say that I wanted this to be a clean plane rather than having this kind of shape to it out here. Fixing this is as simple as the step that we showed before with cleaning up the box. So I'll just drag and select here, press the R button for the scale tool, and in this case I'll just use the red scale button there, and I'm going to drag it to the left. You see that flattens it out that way, and then I'll drag and select those 3 up there, R. In this case I'm going to take the blue box, the darker blue box, and I'll drag it upwards and flatten it out that way. And from there you can kind of reposition it. But that's additionally just a recap of what we did back here, which is to get straight edges back into your model is that holding vertices, dragging the group that you want to bring together, dragging the group that you want to bring together, press R, scale them in like that. And again, it's just in this case, you just have to feel it out. But in this case, it was what was the red box, and it appears yellow since I have it selected. And in this case, I'm just dragging it all the way to the left, and it just snaps it right into position there. So those techniques combined, each one is kind of simple in its own right. I feel like the toughest one was this one right here, which is double extruded faces and edges. So that's the main one to kind of, just keep an eye out for. But that being said, all of these fixes are relatively simple on their own. And if you know all of these and you kind of know how to orchestrate them and kind of know when to use them and when not to use them to fix your models, it really opens things up for you to kind of model freely and be less worried about making mistakes, because if you know all these techniques here, you can fix most models using them, so it just kind of, I remember once I kind of got used to doing all these techniques, it kind of it freed me up a lot modeling in Maya, because I was less afraid to make a mistake and, just able to fix problems here. So I think this is definitely worth practicing, and yeah, and just knowing when to use each of these.